Hello to all you mystifying heroes and mysterious villains. Welcome to another visual guide dedicated to helping fellow players such as yourself. Today we'll take a look at the Speed Force Flux Elite, an 8-player elite level raid introduced through the Anti-Monitor Anniversary event. My name is Starry and I'll be your guiding light. This raid can be done with just one tank, but I would recommend bringing 2 or at the very least a backup tank for the third boss fight. You'll kick things off with a few ad pulls leading up to the first boss, Eye of Paradox. The boss will start the fight off as Brother Eye, so you should handle this part like you would in the normal Batcaves raid. After losing around 25% health, the Eye of Paradox will be revealed. Ads will spawn throughout this entire fight. Make sure to avoid standing near the spinning ads as they deal damage to players standing near them. Tanks will also need to be careful about melee tanking the boss as he does perform a grab attack that deals a high amount of damage. There are 2 main mechanics to this fight, the beam attack and the boss's boulder drop. Eye of Paradox will shoot out a high damaging conal beam. Teams can stack on the primary target for this attack in order to split the damage. This attack can also be outranged, and since the primary target is usually the tank, then the boss can be faced away from the group while the tank runs far enough back to avoid the damage. The second mechanic to watch out for will be the boulder drop, which will be telegraphed by the red X's appearing under every player. Simply avoid standing on the red X's and you'll avoid the boulder damage altogether. The second boss of the instance will be the Avatar of Paradox. This will start the same as the previous boss with a blast from the past. Teams will want to stand on the left wall to avoid the tentacles in the room. Once again, tanks should be careful about melee tanking the boss as this boss performs high damaging melee attacks. Ads will also spawn during this fight, so tanks should be ready to grab them as they spawn. Avatar will select the target before dashing forward, dealing damage to all players in its path. You can block to reduce the damage or simply move out of the way once he starts moving. Be on the lookout for the Paradox energy orbs that will be shot out from the boss. These deal high damage but are pretty inaccurate. Paradox puddles will be placed on the ground, so players should avoid standing in them. Finally, players will need to stay out of melee range of the boss as it performs a high damaging point blank AoE. The third boss of this instance will be the Emissary of Paradox. This boss fight will have ads constantly spawning with 4 statues that will either buff enemies or rehabilitate players. You'll start this fight fighting off waves of ads until the 4 statues spawn. There will be a statue for each role. I'll admit I'm not 100% positive on what each statue does exactly, but from what I've seen in the runs I can only assume I'm correct. But leave a comment if you have any corrections or additions. The controller statue will drain power from players at a rapid rate. The healing statue will heal enemies. The tank statue will buff enemies' defenses, while the DPS statue will buff their damage. In order to lock the statues away for a short time, players will need to stand on their platform until it is captured. Once captured, the corresponding statue will turn back into a statue for a short time. The emissary will eventually show itself and you'll have to deal with it on top of the ads and the statues. To deal with this, a tank can bring the emissary to an isolated part of the room while another tank deals with the ads and statues. This way teams can burn down the emissary without everything else getting in the way. The fourth and final boss of the instance will be the Paradox Kraken. No ads will spawn during this fight, but tentacles will spawn throughout the fight. The tentacles deal damage to nearby players with a chance of grabbing them, immobilizing the player while dealing constant damage to them. Players will also need to watch out for the interdimensional ink, which will deal damage to the target before taking away their abilities. In order to remove the ink, affected players will need to jump in the pool where Kraken sits, or they can touch the smaller puddles on the ground. Touching either one will deal damage to the player, with the pool teleporting the player outside the pool. Kraken spray is a frontal cone that will be signaled by the skull icon above his head, while the Kraken swipe attack is signaled by a layered rectangular red marker on the ground. Kraken will teleport to different locations after taking some damage, so be ready to move positions while avoiding the tentacles. Kraken will repeat these mechanics until he's defeated. And thanks for watching everyone. Please leave a comment and a thumbs up if you've enjoyed this video, and if you're interested in staying up to date with all the latest DCUO guides, then consider subscribing to the channel. See ya.